Use humility to improve yourself. There are moments in life when silence speaks louder than words, when bowed heads carry more strength than raised voices. In those moments, we come face to face with a force that transforms, heals, and uplifts humility. We live in a world that celebrates pride, loudness, and self-promotion, yet it is in the quiet grace of humility that real growth happens. It is not weakness to admit that we don't know everything. It is not shameful to learn from a fall. In fact, it is the foundation upon which we build resilience, empathy, and inner strength. Today, I want to talk about how humility is not the absence of confidence, but the very ingredient that makes our confidence real, kind, and unshakable. Embrace being a learner always. There is something profoundly powerful about admitting that you don't know everything. In a world where everyone is busy pretending to be perfect, the most courageous act is to raise your hand and say, I'm still learning. Learning doesn't make you less, it makes you limitless. When you approach life as a student, everything becomes a lesson and everyone becomes a teacher. The wind that blows, the silence that speaks, the failures that fall, they all carry wisdom, waiting for you to humble yourself and listen. A learner doesn't fear mistakes, a learner welcomes them. Because every mistake made with honesty is a step toward clarity. Every stumble is a chapter of understanding. But the moment pride enters, the doors of learning start to close. You start defending instead of listening. You start reacting instead of reflecting. And growth is replaced by ego. But when humility lives within you, you no longer fear being wrong. You fear missing the chance to become better. To be a learner means to stay curious even in moments of discomfort. It means to be okay with not knowing and to have the grace to seek out what is unknown. It's not about being a blank slate. It's about being an open book, ready to be written on, ready to evolve. And that openness doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from humility. Humility that says, there is still so much more for me to understand. And in that understanding, you find your expansion. Every time you say, teach me, you break the chains of ego. You disarm the need to perform. You strip away the pressure to be perfect, and instead, you step into your most authentic self, a self that thrives on growth, not approval. You don't just learn facts, you learn humanity, compassion, and resilience. You become more than skilled, you become wise. And wisdom is not loud, it is gentle. It speaks through eyes that observe and hearts that remain open. The greatest minds in the world never stop learning. Not because they are weak, but because they are wise enough to know that knowledge is endless. They sit in rooms where they are not the smartest because they know every voice matters. They ask questions that others are too proud to ask, and in doing so, they keep growing long after others stop. The secret is not in always being right. The secret is in always being ready to learn. When you live like a learner, your life becomes a journey of becoming. You begin to flow like water, able to bend without breaking, able to rise without boasting. You no longer feel threatened by what you don't know, you feel excited by it. You stop shrinking in front of those who know more, and instead, you shine beside them, learning and evolving moment by moment, breath by breath. Accept criticism without breaking. The ability to accept criticism without letting it shatter you is one of the quietest forms of inner strength. It's easy to smile when people praise you, but it's transformative when you can stay centered when they don't. We are all mirrors to each other, and sometimes those reflections come through hard truths. Humility allows you to look into those mirrors and see not insult, but insight, not rejection, but redirection. And that shift in perception becomes the gateway to your elevation. Criticism often arrives wrapped in discomfort, and our instinct is to protect ourselves, to defend, to deny, to push away. But there's a deeper strength in choosing to pause, breathe, and say, what is this moment trying to teach me? That pause is sacred. That pause is growth. It separates the reactive from the reflective. And in that moment, your heart learns how to listen, not from a place of fear, but from a place of freedom. You don't have to agree with every opinion spoken about you, but if you meet each one with humility, you allow even the harshest words to soften into wisdom. You stop hearing attack and start seeking alignment. You begin to ask, is there truth in this that can help me become better? That one question turns criticism into a compass. It helps you navigate not away from yourself, but deeper into the version of you that is still unfolding. Humility takes away the need to always be praised. It teaches you to value the voice of correction as much as the voice of encouragement. It reminds you that growth often comes wrapped in silence, in discomfort, in challenge. And when you receive criticism without letting it define you, you turn it into a lesson, not a label. You stop shrinking from feedback and you start rising through it. That's how character is built. Not through applause, but through awareness. To accept criticism with grace is to stand tall without being rigid. It's to bend without breaking. It's to hold space for someone else's perspective without losing your own. It's not about lowering yourself, it's about lifting your understanding. That ability doesn't come from pride. It comes from humility. And it is one of the rarest forms of emotional intelligence in a world that teaches us to protect rather than reflect. So the next time someone points out something in you, lean in, listen, reflect. Not because they are better than you, but because you are strong enough to keep becoming better than you were yesterday. Let the sting soften, let the words settle, and then rise. Not from anger, but from awareness. Ready to take another step into the fullness of who you are becoming. Stay grounded in success. Success has a way of testing character far more than failure ever will. When you're struggling, you're naturally humble. But when you start rising, when recognition finds your name and applause becomes familiar, that's when humility becomes a choice. A powerful, intentional daily choice. Staying grounded when your dreams begin to manifest is what turns success into legacy. And only humility can keep your spirit rooted in that truth. When you forget where you came from, success becomes noise. But when you carry gratitude in your steps, success becomes music. Humility turns achievement into meaning. It reminds you that your climb was not solitary. That behind every victory were hands that held you, prayers that lifted you, sacrifices made in silence. Humility helps you remember the staircase, not just the summit. And in that remembrance, your soul stays human. You start treating others not based on your status, but based on your heart. You listen more, not less. You serve more, not less. Because success is not about becoming more important, it's about becoming more impactful. And impact only grows when humility leads. It allows you to walk into any room and leave people feeling seen, not small. Because greatness is not proven in how loudly you speak, but in how gently you treat those who can give you nothing. It's tempting to believe the praise, to define your worth by the applause. But humility reminds you that you are more than your titles, that your value existed before the world validated it, that your essence is rooted not in how many people know your name, but in how deeply you know yourself. And that kind of knowing only deepens when you keep your heart low enough to remain teachable. You don't need to announce your arrival when you've arrived in peace. You don't need to show off what speaks for itself. The quietest people often carry the loudest grace. The ones who lead with humility inspire more than those who demand attention. Because when you stay grounded, your success becomes a mirror that reflects possibility for others, not just pride for yourself. So when you rise, rise gently. When you win, win kindly. And when the world claps for you, remember to bow not to them, but to the journey that made you, the people who shaped you, and the humility that sustained you through every step you dared to take. Let go of the need to be right. There's an invisible pressure that lives inside so many of us, the need to be right. The need to be understood, to prove our point, to win the argument. And yet, what we often lose in that battle is peace. What we sacrifice is connection. But when humility enters the room, it softens that need. It teaches us that being right is not always more valuable than being kind. That sometimes the true victory is in choosing silence over superiority. Letting go of the need to be right doesn't mean you don't have wisdom. It means you have the wisdom to know when to speak and when to listen. Sometimes we speak to defend our pride, not to express truth. Sometimes we argue not because we want clarity, but because we want control. But humility whispers to the heart, you don't have to fight every battle. Some truths reveal themselves in stillness. And in that stillness, peace grows. When you embrace humility, you stop debating every perspective and you start exploring them. You become less reactive and more reflective. You understand that someone else's viewpoint doesn't threaten yours, it enriches it. And when you let others speak their truth without interruption, you become someone people trust, not just someone they hear. Because the most powerful people in the room are not the loudest, they are the most grounded. The humble heart doesn't seek to dominate conversations, it seeks to understand. It doesn't argue to win, it listens to connect. And in doing so, it becomes a safe space, not a battleground. There's a freedom in not needing the last word. There's a strength in walking away without proving a point. That kind of maturity is not built overnight. It's built in moments of conscious surrender, where your inner peace becomes more important than public validation. You begin to realize that some arguments are not about right or wrong, they're about ego versus empathy. And when you let empathy lead, you diffuse the tension. You heal the space. You elevate the conversation. Humility doesn't mean you dim your voice. It means you choose when to use it in ways that heal rather than hurt, that invite rather than impose. So when the next disagreement rises, pause. Ask yourself, is this about truth or is this about pride? And if it's pride, choose humility. Choose to listen. Choose to understand. Choose to let go, not because you're weak, but because you're wise enough to know that inner peace is far more valuable than being declared right-heeled through vulnerability. There's a unique courage in saying, I'm not okay. It takes strength to open your heart, to remove the mask, and to show up with your scars exposed. Vulnerability is not a crack in your armor, it is the gateway to healing. And it is humility that unlocks that gate. When you allow yourself to be seen, not as perfect, but as real, you begin the journey of becoming whole. You stop pretending to be strong, and you start being strong in your honesty. We live in a world where weakness is judged, where breakdowns are hidden, and where everyone is trying to hold it together. But the truth is, healing begins when we stop hiding, when we let others see the wounds, not to gain sympathy, but to create connection. Because in your brokenness, someone else finds belonging. In your truth, someone else finds the courage to speak theirs. And that power only comes when humility quiets the ego that tells you to stay silent. Humility teaches us that we don't need to carry every burden alone. That seeking help doesn't make us less, it makes us brave. You were never meant to suffer in silence. You were never designed to fake strength while your soul trembles. The moment you say, I need support, you invite love into places that were once filled with fear. And in that love, healing begins to bloom. There is nothing more liberating than showing up as your whole self. No filter, no facade, just you in all your pain, your joy, your confusion, your light. That authenticity doesn't repel people, it draws them closer. It says, I'm not above you, I'm beside you. And from that place, real relationships are born. Ones built not on performance, but on presence. Not on perfection, but on shared humanity. When you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you also give others permission to exhale. You become the reminder that it's okay to cry, to falter, to feel deeply. And that reminder is sacred. It is healing in motion. It is courage disguised as softness. And the world doesn't need more performers. It needs more hearts willing to be seen, heard, and held. So open your arms to the parts of you that tremble. Sit with the emotions you've long silenced. Let humility guide you into the spaces where you've buried your truth. And in those quiet, honest spaces, healing will not only begin, it will flourish. At the end of the day, humility is not about making yourself small. It is about making space within yourself to grow. It is the quiet power that whispers. You don't have to have it all figured out. It allows you to look in the mirror and still see room for growth, for healing, for softness. When you choose humility, you no longer chase perfection, you embrace progress. You no longer fear vulnerability, you welcome it as the birthplace of strength. In a world that urges you to shout louder, humility gently asks you to listen deeper. The beauty of humility lies in its ability to transform your inner world. It allows you to rise without arrogance and fall without shame. It helps you keep your soul intact through both applause and silence. It teaches you to walk through success without stepping over others, to accept criticism without breaking, to let go of ego without losing self-worth. Humility gives you the wisdom to pause, the courage to say, I don't know, and the grace to keep becoming better with every breath. So if you wish to grow, don't just gather achievements, gather humility. Let it sit beside you in your triumphs and guide you through your trials. Let it shape your conversation, soften your reactions, and deepen your understanding. Because the truest kind of improvement doesn't come from how much you know or how far you go. It comes from how deeply you stay connected to the part of you that still dares to learn, to bend, to feel, and to rise with compassion